Now, the First Coast's most accurate forecast from the First Coast News Weather Team, certified by Weather Rate, sponsored by AC Designs.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's 4 o'clock here in Jacksonville, Florida. We're looking at St. Augustine, and it's just me, just Lou Turner. No Ross today, rolling solo. I'm all alone. Donkey?
'Cause I'm all alone. There's no one here
Beside me. What am I supposed to do?
Problems have all gone. There's
No one to deride me. But,
But you gotta have friends. Stop
whoa.
singing.
All right, Shrek.
It's no.
We miss Ross, but I've got you as my friends, right? Right. Thank you, Donkey. Donkey! We got a little breezy forecast. We got to talk about some coastal river flooding today, especially down towards Julington Creek. I'm looking at St. Augustine, and I'm showing you the Bridge of Lions there. And if you look at the channel, right, you look at the boating channel underneath the bridge, the Kansas River, it's high. All right, so that water is up to the top of those little barriers that kind of protect with the boats coming underneath the main channel. And that one lonely little boat, he needs a friend. All alone, 88, 94 is what the feels like temperature is in St. Augustine. Let's think about that, okay? Let's have that in our minds as we go through our weather stream for the next few minutes together today. Heat index values are returning, and that's a big part of our show. So kind of want to talk big, outline of the show today, those northeast winds that continue, kind of ending this streak of days that we've had at 90 or below. We got to warm right back up with heat index values coming for Jags football, for Friday Night Lights, and then the tropics. So we've got a lot to get to in a little bit amount of time. Coastal alerts, though, so that rip current statement has been dropped. I still think there's a pretty high risk of rips, so we got to watch that. And, of course, lifeguard hours have adjusted now that we've come and gone past Labor Day. So we got to be very, very careful when it comes to the rips, but the waves have begun to subside. All right, looking at coastal flood advisory. Now, let's not let that be misleading. That's the name of the advisory, but that does include the river. So we're going to call it Coastal Flood Advisory for the St. Johns River, and that's everywhere highlighted in green, and that is really going to impact us at least through Friday, perhaps through the weekend. Maybe we get a little break in these higher than normal tides that we've been experiencing along the St. Johns River south of town, so really Orange Park south. But those higher tides are coming back next week. So we get kind of a short maybe break in some of those higher tides, but they will be back because we got a full moon on the 7th. Of course, that leads to some higher tides. And then we've got another nor'easter style system setting up for us as we get to the beginning of next week. Hence our weather headline. So here's your big outline. Coastal river, parenthetical, flood advisory at times of high tide. So let's think about our high tides. And I'm going to outline that for you in a minute so you don't have to think about it. You can know it. And again, impact areas are south of downtown. There'll be full marshes, certainly, for the tributaries of the St. Johns River close to Mayport, intracoastal waterway, certainly. But really those main impact areas, and we've seen it firsthand. We've seen cameras, we've seen videos along Julington Creek, the Julington Creek. Now, let's not get that mixed up with the neighborhood, the community of Julington Creek in St. Johns County. I'm talking about in Mandarin, in southern Duval County, right along that Julington Creek area, where the fish camp is, where that fresh market is, across from the fish camp. That is Julington Creek Road, okay? It's past that Metro Diner. It runs parallel to the Julington Creek, and that ultimately kind of forks off. I mean that nicely. Don't fork off now. Fork with me and fork around to the Durbin Creek. So the Julington Creek forks into the Durbin Creek, and some of those homes and streets that come right up to that creek, we've seen some of that nuisance flooding, which is giving people a hard time getting out of their driveways. Now, property damage would be limited just because many of those houses are built up and up on stilts, but still water in yards at times of high tide. And then your big third headline, heat and humidity build back in for the weekend. So Jags fans, hydrate. We will get to that. All right, so your high tides to watch. I mentioned I'm going to tell you about it, and so you don't have to think about it, so you know specifically what the tides are for. Okay, a dear old friend, a meteorologist friend, just texted me and said, "You're not alone. Julie, Bungie, and I are watching." Bungie! All right, thank you. Thank you for watching. And watch those tides. Though I think on your side of town you're fine. But, if you were to take a nice dinner towards the Metro Diner or Julington Creek Fish Camp, watch it at 11:02. So that evening, folks living along those roads, along Julington Creek Road, close to the creek itself and the Durbin Creek, will have issues again tonight at 11:02, and then of course tomorrow morning right around that 10:30 time frame. So this includes from Orange Park south, but we've seen the most issues so far that Julington Creek area. But some high tides on the way again tonight, all the way down to Palatka, which is while most people would be sleeping, 1:54 a.m., and then Willaca at 2:04. Mentioned your rip current risk stays high, and that would be all the way through really tomorrow. So we mentioned Wednesday there. I think Thursday and Friday we still see some stronger rips, and I just want you to be extra aware of the fact that lifeguards are kind of wrapping up things at different hours, so fewer lifeguards at different times. But wave heights are coming down, and this is nice. So day to day, just comparison. So we're at Thursday now. Tuesday, we were seeing wave heights up to 7 feet. Wednesday, they kind of came down to that 3 to 4 feet. Now 2 to 3, and these are the buoys just offshore. And so while offshore fishing would still be a little bumpy, 2 to 3 is certainly what folks can handle. All right, satellite, and we're taking a look at the visible imagery over southeast Georgia and northeast Florida here on a Thursday afternoon. We'll say out towards the beach, getting some clearing skies, and we've got pretty sunny conditions from 95 east and dry air. All right, so we got that dry air. The water vapor imagery, it's a satellite product, so satellite changed channels, so to speak, on it, and you get an idea of what amount of moisture content you got in the middle and sometimes upper layers of the atmosphere. And so showing you a pretty stark contrast from where we're having some drier air, lower humidity for northeast Florida, southeast Georgia, and then you run into that really sharp line of humid condition from St. Augustine, where I told you we had heat index values around 94 still. St. Augustine south towards the Volusia County, Flagler, Volusia, and down through the Space Coast, you've got some pretty humid air in place. So pretty sharp dividing line there between humid and dry air, which we have over us right now. So we've been blessed with a streak of days below 90. We hit 8 straight days below 90. And if you think back to the entirety of our summer, we've had more than 100 days up and above 90. And typical for the time of year would be 70 to 80 days. So we've had up and over 100. We had that hot spell, of course, end of July, early August, where we had 4 consecutive days at 100 or above even. So we've been used to the heat for the summer, but we've had an 8-day break. And while the heat is going to turn up a bit through the weekend, it's not going to be that heat advisory level of heat and humidity. It is going to be a little maybe jarring if you're spending a lot of time outside relative to what we've been experiencing. And when I say a lot of time outside, of course, we've got Jacksonville Jaguar football, where a lot of people will be spending a lot of time outside on Sunday, 1 o'clock kick, you tailgating for a couple hours before that, and then you're going to spend 3.5 hours in the bank, full sun beating down on you. I mean, small rain chances, not zero, smaller rain chances though. So I'm going to say we got to be extra careful for that heat. The winds tell a story, right? So this isn't damaging winds, but when you've got winds 10 to 12 to 15 pretty consistently for the last week coming out of northeast, east-northeast, east, north-northeast, all of them essentially an onshore flow. What that's doing is filling up the St. Johns River when it's times of incoming tide, and when it's times of outgoing tide, because as you know, the St. Johns River flows north. When it's trying to empty at the Mayport jetties into the ocean, when you're getting into that position, those northeast winds and that steady, pounding of ocean water riding that fetch in, it doesn't flush the river out very well. So that factor, coupled with a lot of rain has fallen over the St. Johns River watershed all the way through the Indian River Lagoon, which feeds into the St. Johns River watershed, and down through Seminole County and parts of Central Florida. So, Sanford, Florida, the St. Johns River runs all the way through there, and they've dealt with a ton of rain. So it's all filling in, and that is why we have been consistently talking about those higher than normal tides and that nuisance flooding along some of the streets in the southern ends of the St. Johns River south of downtown Jacksonville. Now, the rest of the evening looking very, very pleasant as far as sky conditions go. So you're doing well. Very low rain chances through the evening, and those very low rain chances would be for Flagler, Volusia. For us, more St. John's, North and Southeast Georgia, you saw that dry air. It's just not happening. You're good to go for your evening plans tonight as we are right on the cusp of a Friday and the weekend. We got that warm-up, kind of the precursor as we go to the Friday. Mostly rain-free for Friday, too. Okay, running computer modeling. Just note, here's your futurecast. We've got those steady onshore winds yet again going through Friday afternoon. Hard-pressed to see any rain squeezed out of those clouds. And we see the clouds moving onshore Friday afternoon. They'll be thickening up a bit. You might notice a couple darker clouds. If anything gets squeezed out in the form of rain, that would be when later Friday afternoon. But truly, keeping those rain chances low for Friday. Keeping them on the lower end for Saturday as well. Bumping them up a bit for Sunday, but still looking pretty good for Jags football. All right, let's move into a time of talking about the tropics. All right, so the National Hurricane Center, we have a new invest right there. The X marks the spot. Your red shaded area marks the spots where the Hurricane Center would watch for potential development. We are very confident that over the next week, and that's pretty aggressive, and that's pretty far out, over the next week we will have at least a tropical storm, and most likely we will have, or a tropical depression, and most likely we would have tropical storm Gabrielle. But even over the next 48 hours, it's possible, and really it's looking like more and more likely this weekend we will have tropical storm Gabrielle that will have formed. So that's the area to watch. A couple of computer model comparisons that we're going to run out. Today is the 4th, 904 day. Happy 904 day, by the way. Let's go 5 days out to the 9th. All right, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We're talking getting to Monday, Tuesday. Those circles there would represent an area of low pressure, both those global models, the American and the Euro, showing that potential for development. But even to September 11th would still be around the Lesser Antilles. You've got to go towards the 13th, 14th, so 10 days from today. You're talking about not this weekend, next weekend before any potential development would be a beam of Puerto Rico. So the long and the short of that is we have got a lot of time to think about this, and computer model runs with the spaghetti look. I want to show you this consistency that something would be developing near the Lesser Antilles, approaching the Caribbean. But that ends, the other part of the reason I want to show you the spaghetti model plots is more timing as well. I mean, we're talking about Wednesday, 6 days out. And it's still way out there. A storm that far out in the Atlantic gives us 10 to 14 days to really look at. It is moving into an area with very warm sea surface temperatures, certainly. We're going to watch the condition of our Bermuda High, perhaps retrograding back to the east, and that would allow for some steering to the north, but so much has to happen. We've also been blessed with a bunch of kind of unseasonable fronts coming through our area. May also help us 10 to 14 days away from now with this particular area to watch, which is nothing yet. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tropical storms we've had already this season, and boom, a Category 5. So that's been the season so far, and again, showing you Gabrielle would be the next system, and rapidly getting closer and closer. Today's, I mentioned 904 day, we're at December 4th. There we are. We are here, like the map at the mall. Where's the Cinnabon? The Cinnabon's there. Where's Lulu's here? And there we are at September 4th, getting closer and closer to that peak. But don't let just because we're at the peak, we have the falling action, but a lot of action has and continues to happen even in the months late September into October. We've seen it with in the past. Just in the last year, all right? So we know that it can happen later on in the season. So we stay vigilant, we stay prepared. So the big weather impact when it comes to our tropics, still lots of time to watch this particular invest. Plenty of warm sea surface temperatures, which I showed you on that map. Models have been consistent. If nothing else, they have been consistent in a storm developing. So we will watch that for the weekend. And of course, we mentioned the peak of the hurricane season is the 10th of September, right? As this system may begin to develop. So we're talking our next big weather maker. We have, I mentioned a couple of fronts. So we will have a front diving in by Sunday that could bring us our Jags late day. So kicks 1, 4, 5 o'clock. But I think the best chance of rain really as we go to Sunday is going to be southeast Georgia. Most of the moisture will still be kind of relegated up there before the front finally passes Monday and brings us our next nor'easter condition. But ahead of that front, as you know, before fronts approach, you get climbing moisture levels, you get humidity, you get heat, and that is what we really need to be watching out for when it comes to Friday Night Football in the low 80s, but as well as our Jags football game. People need to hydrate. So here is meteorologist Lee Southwick with some good ideas when it comes to the heat.
You need to call 911. So let's start with the head. With heat exhaustion, you're going to be faint or dizzy, but with heat stroke, you'll have a throbbing headache. You'll have excessive sweating with heat exhaustion, but with heat stroke, there will be no sweating. With heat exhaustion, your skin will be cool, pale, and clammy, and with heat stroke, you'll have a body temperature above 103 degrees. Your skin will be red and hot and dry because you're not sweating anymore. With heat exhaustion and heat stroke, nausea or vomiting is a sign of both. But with heat exhaustion, you'll have a rapid, weak pulse, and with heat stroke, you'll have a rapid, strong pulse. With heat exhaustion, you'll have muscle cramps. With heat stroke, you'll have confusion, and you may even lose consciousness. So with someone experiencing heat exhaustion, make sure to get them to a cool place. Try to cool them down quickly. Use a cold compress. If possible, take a cool shower and give them water if they are fully conscious. With heat stroke, call 911 and then immediately take action to cool them down with a cool compress, but do not give them any fluids. I'm meteorologist Lee Southwick. First Coast News on your side.
Lee Southwick. See, I wasn't all alone. I had Lee the whole time. And Robert Spetta just texted me. So I do have friends. Thank you, guys. All right. Thank you for watching. Look out towards the bank. We know it's going to be hot. That is the whole reason we were kind of bringing up the difference between heat exhaustion, heat stroke, obviously. But, let's just call it what it is. People are going to be out drinking alcohol, right? You're going to have a couple cold beers. You're going to have a couple cocktails before you go into the Jags game, maybe during the Jags game as well. Fine. Mix in a water. Just mix in a water. I think we chat GPT'd Toby and I were looking at, was it Toby? Was it you or Caroline? One of us were chat GPT and how much water you should have after a beer. And it's like a 1-to-1 ratio. We were talking about that yesterday. So maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. It's AI. But nonetheless, just have that in mind. And the fact that, we've got those low 90s for both Saturday and Sunday, maybe some late day thunder on Sunday with heat index values we're kind of highlighting for that 1 o'clock kick at 102. Don't get too caught up in the thunderstorms. We will watch for them isolated afterwards, but again, I'm kind of focused more maybe north of the stadium, so certainly northern Baker County, Nassau, and up into Camden, Glen, we could maybe see a couple thunderstorms. But overall, I think we're okay. It's just the heat. That's the story. So let's be prepared for that. And plenty of sunscreen, and don't be one of the ones that they have to call us about and say, yeah, we treated 115 people at this Jags game, all heat-related illness. We don't want that because that heat index trend is climbing through the weekend. Now, Monday, Tuesday, things begin to change, right? Change briefly for the weekend, but go back almost to what we have seen and experienced the last weekend. If you remember, the strong northeast flow, the heavy showers along some of our coasts, Nassau County, Jacks Beach. We had a good deal of rain, and those northeast winds would continue. And we'll probably have to watch for more nuisance coastal flooding Monday through Thursday because we got a full moon coming up early next week. I'll see you at 5 o'clock on First Coast News. Thank you so much for joining me. I never felt alone in the whole thing because you were there with me. We'll talk to you a little bit later. Been here since 2010, forecasting the weather for Southeast Georgia, for the First Coast and Northeast Florida. And it is a blessing and a treat to get to do it and work here with the First Coast News Weather Channel, which is powered by the First Coast's most accurate weather team. My passion is making sure you are prepared to start your day.
I grew up watching First Coast News. I grew up watching Tim Deegan.
Meteorology is not only my job, it's my hobby. I love being a meteorologist. I love being a part of your day.
When it comes to a forecast, trust isn't just one thing. Trust is the only thing that matters. The First Coast's most accurate weather team, sponsored by AC Designs.
I'm meteorologist Robert Spetta, First Coast News on your side. I've been working in meteorology for almost 20 years now, working with the Navy, even at Naval Station Mayport, as well as overseas, inside and covering typhoons, some of the biggest storms on Earth, and taking all of that knowledge back here to the First Coast and in the Jacksonville, and help tracking our hurricanes and severe weather in our neighborhood, knowing how they impact not only our local community, but the military as well. And number one thing, of course, is being on your side, keeping you safe with your most accurate forecast. So make sure you download that First Coast News app, and also you can stream our newscast on First Coast News FCN Plus, as well as any severe weather or special weather coverage as well. I'm meteorologist Robert Spetta, First Coast News on your side. Nice weather here on our Thursday with mostly sunny skies, temperatures high 80s to lower 90s after a fresh start with the lows into the 60s here. Overall, the weather actually is going to be rather calm here to wrap up the work week. Even in the Friday, a few more clouds, but overall pretty decent. The one thing you do have to worry about, though, is there is a coastal flood advisory for St. John's and Flagler County. We're heading towards a full moon, and we've had a lot of rainfall in that northeast wind earlier this week. It's really backed up a lot of our bays and inlets, including the St. John's River. So everything's running just a little bit high out there. Now, as we go ahead into the weekend, though, the overall conditions are going to kind of change up a bit. We're going to start to see an increase in clouds and a chance of rainfall by Sunday over towards Monday. But the big thing is going to be another round of a northeasterly winds, rather persistent by the early part of next week. That is also going to increase that flood threat yet again. That northeasterly wind sticking around to about midweek. We're also watching the tropics, by the way. We do have an area coming off the coast of Africa with a high chance of tropical development. Likely it's going to be our next named storm system. Still, the jury is out on exactly where it could go, but definitely always going to keep an eye on it, especially this time of year, which only about a week away from the peak of hurricane season. With your most accurate forecast, I'm First Coast News meteorologist Robert Spetta.
Hi, I'm meteorologist Lee Southwick. You're watching the First Coast News Weather Channel. We are proud to have been named the most accurate weather team in Jacksonville for the 5th year in a row by Weather Rate. We take our forecasting very seriously, and we want to get every detail right and accurate. We know weather impacts your day, whether it's going to work, going to school, running errands, going to the beach, or out on the water. You need to know what time that rain is going to arrive, how hot it's going to be, if fog is going to impact you, or if it's windy. And we want to nail it every day for you. We promise to keep working hard to stay the most accurate when it comes to forecasting for the First Coast.